Okay, so good morning. It's great to have you with us. I've got Andrea and Gustavo with us this morning to join us in this week where we continue in our series, which is about listening to God. And it's been fun, actually, the conversations over the last few weeks, being reminded of the different ways in which God speaks to us, to hear stories of from within our community of how God is and has and does speak to us. We know that. We're learning about it, we're being reminded of it. And our hope for this series is that we're not just going to understand that God does speak to us. It's not just about learning how he speaks to us, but that actually that God would do something through this, that he raises in us an expectation and also an excitement about the fact that he speaks to us, that we can hear his voice. And actually from that point, life gets so much more exciting as we listen, we hear, and then respond to him. So I've said that I've got Gustavo and Andrea with us, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves a little bit for people that maybe don't know you as well as I do.
Mm-hmm. So I'm Gustavo. I work at Regent College, and I came here in 2015 with this lady, and I was we came because I was pursuing my master's degree at Regent, and now I work at Regent. So more on that story to come.
Yes, and I am Andrea, also from Brazil. We moved to Canada in 2015, and now I work with Arosha down in Surrey.
Great. Thank you so much for agreeing to come in and do this and sit and talk to me. Really, thank you for that. I had to call a lot of people, but thank you for saying yes. So yeah, lots of ways in which the Bible, we hear stories about the way God speaks to his people. There are times of national crisis and God speaks through the prophets. There are times of healing where God gives direction, where God comforts, where he corrects his people. I think we understand that God, he speaks to us out of his love. His words to us will be for our encouragement, for our growth. But today we're just going to zone in and focus in on how God speaks to us and calls us at times to a particular mission. It might be a time of life direction, of change. Because the text that we had read earlier from Acts 8 is this story about Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. But really, as we talk, I want us just to grasp this idea that as children of God, as that is who we are in Christ Jesus, but to listen to his voice is to open ourselves to the opportunities to partner with God in his kingdom ministry and these wonderful opportunities. And it's in that place of listening to him and in that place of then responding to him that we actually get to share in and experience the abundant life that Jesus tells us, that shares with us and invites us into. So if we're going to go to the story then of Philip and this Ethiopian, and the first thing that struck me as I read through this text is that there's this movement of from the wonders and the crowds of the city of Samaria. Philip then has to go to a desert road. I mean, we read just a few verses before, the crowds with one accord paid attention to what was being said by Philip. He is the center of attention, he's the man. God is doing great things. People are being healed. Unclean spirits are crying out, are coming out of people. And then God says to him, an angel of the Lord, God functions as God's mouthpiece, go south to the road, the desert road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. Right, from this excitement of the city of Samaria and this buzzing ministry, and this is surely the place to be, and great things are happening, to the desert road. And Philip, we'll read, he goes, he says, yes. You guys are from Brazil, I'm from England, I had a spell of time in Brazil, and now I'm in Canada, and you're in Canada. How did that happen? So did you just wake up and think, let's move to Canada? God has spoken to you.
You want to talk about my part or your part?
I want to hear about your part.
Yeah, I think we came from the buzz and the crowds of São Paulo, which is also a big city, and we were invited to come to this small city here in Canada. But the reason why we came was, I think we felt that God was inviting us to follow Him, right? So we were not really expecting to come to Canada, actually. I think the whole story was we were both looking for ways in which we could follow Jesus more intentionally. That was the point. Like there are many points of the story, more dramatic and less dramatic ones. But I think it started with, I was reading the Bible, Matthew 10:39, whoever, finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses it, their life for my sake will find it. And at that point, I realized that I was looking for my own life. My career, my studies, everything was kind of following my own direction. And then I said to myself, and actually the Spirit told me, if you say you're following me, you have to really to follow me, not to decide and go. And then I started crying, and it was like, always dangerous to read the Bible, right? So, and then I talked to her about it, and I said, something's happening. Jesus is inviting us to do something, or to go somewhere, I don't know. And then we started, talking about it. And we had like these conversations about changes that could happen. And then as we were trying to discern, we made a list of friends, 6 friends that we talked to, just to say, hey, am I too crazy here? What's happening? Can you help me to discern? And then they, in every conversation we had, it was clear that we were looking for something that would be here in Canada, more specifically in Vancouver.
Because of Regent College.
Because of Regent College, yeah. But the most interesting thing is that when I had this kind of meltdown, in front of my Bible and everything, and I talked to her, she said, let me show you something. And then she brought a prayer that she wrote a month before that God was speaking to her. About something that would change.
Yeah. I was in a retreat with my mentors and other people, and then God clearly talked to me to one of the mentors saying about Jesus and the Galilee and his ministry there, and I felt that something was going to change, but I didn't know what. And I remember I even write it down, okay, Jesus, if you're calling me to something different. I was working with Arosha at that time, but I felt that something was coming, that something new was coming. And then I write it down, okay, but you need to tell Gustavo about that, because if you don't tell him, he wants to do his MBA in France. I don't know if this is what you're talking about this right now. And I was sure that was not about France and MBA, but I asked him, okay, you need to talk to him because I don't know. Maybe I'll do something different here in São Paulo. I didn't know at that time.
So when I had that kind of, revelation, I would say, when I talked to her about it, it was just, okay, things clicked.
Yeah.
God is inviting us to something here. But I just wanted to say that this was very kind of dramatic.
Right.
It wasn't always like that. That was one moment.
Okay.
That we had, so.
Yeah.
It's got to be something big. I mean, at times I think if you're going to move from one continent to another,
Yeah,
you're going to be able to hear it clearly,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's great. Interesting how God had
Yeah.
to speak to both of you, right?
Yeah.
About this. It's no good. Gustavo said, I think the Lord has said, oh, good for you. He hasn't told me yet.
Yeah.
So,
and even with our friends, we asked them, we consulted them. I think this is something also important when you think that God is speaking to you, just trying to hear from your friends who know you, okay, this is something, it seems really God talking to you to do something different in community, because we discern in community, right? We believe in this,
And all your friends said, yeah, you should go.
Yeah. He did.
Okay.
Thank you.
So here we go. So we get back into this story. So Philip, you guys know what it is. It's almost this sense of downward mobility. You're leaving all this, and then you're coming. You're going to come be students and start from scratch, right, in a new country. But then it's not just about where. I mean, when God calls us and when He guides us, we may be surprised by where and what. I didn't see that coming. but also in this story is like, to who? We read that Philip started out heading down this desert road, and on his way, he met an Ethiopian eunuch. So it's like, really? And this guy was an unlikely recipient of God's grace and favor. I think in Philip's eyes, we would understand. He was an important guy. Read that he was an official in charge of all the treasury, and he'd gone to Jerusalem to worship God. But we know that because he was a eunuch, the law in Deuteronomy 23, it said this guy, he cannot come into the temple. So he would have been excluded. He would not have been fully welcomed in. Couldn't be a part of that community. So he's gone. He's tried. He's observed really as an outsider still. And then I think we get this glimpse of the Father's heart for the lost, for the least, and the lengths that God would go to reach out to those that He's calling to Himself, like to His children. And we talk. Jesus says, my sheep know my name, or they know my voice, and they follow me. And the good shepherd who leaves the 99 to go out for the one. And here is God sending Philip from the crowds to this one man. But the beauty of this story, that strikes, is like it's all God's initiative, right? How God has set this up so perfectly. And we say yes, we go, but it's not about I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to take the. It's like God. It's where we get to join in with what God is already doing, right? That He's already at work. And in this story, as we read through, that Philip goes up, and God only gives him like little bits at a time, doesn't He? Like, can you go down to the road? And then he sees the guy, and then like go up to where he is, like go, and then he goes up enough that he can hear him, and he sees this guy. So the place. He's reading from like the gift of a scripture that he gets to be able to speak into. And then the guy asks him all these brilliant questions like, okay, you asked me. And, it's that dream moment that you get to witness. And then, this guy says, so what's stopping me from being baptized? And actually that question is, here's a bit of water. But it's not just that water, but if the gospel is true, if what you're telling me is true, then all the barriers, that exclusion has been removed. Like there is nothing stopping me now from coming to God. So unexpected moments, right, of saying yes to God, trusting Him, and then finding that He does these great things, that it really is all of His work, and we get to just kind of join in. I mean, have you experienced that in any way where you've said yes and then it's like boom, 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 boom?
Yeah. I think there's one story. When we decided to come, I had to quit my job, right? So I said to my manager, hey, I'm quitting, and then and then I remember he was very nervous because I was thinking that I was going to the other firm, right? And I don't know, I'm going to Canada to study theology. Study what? Theology. What is that? And I kind of talked to him and just, okay. Well, you always surprise me. You know that? I guess. And okay, yeah, thank you. We'll talk to the partner, and then we're gonna, set everything out for you to leave well. And then a few days later, I got a call from the partner, actually, the firm, inviting me to his office, and then he says to me, so I know that I heard that you received a call from someone so high up there that I cannot even make like a counter offer to you. Is that true? And I was just like, well, if you put it that way, I think that makes sense. Yes, that's true. And so what are you going to talk about? What are you going to do there? What's the deal? And then I started like a conversation with him, maybe 2 hours. Wow. Explaining to him what marketplace theology was and how important like faith to the workplace was. Or I kind of explained everything I knew at that point. And I think that I would never have that opportunity to share with him about my faith so openly in his office. Right. If it wasn't because of that. Yeah. So I wasn't expecting it. And I did not baptize him there, but I should probably call
in the sink.
Yeah, just go. Can I go to the bathroom? Yeah. So that was a neat story. Yeah.
And this conversation even gave us the money to come because of this he decided to leave let Gustav go, and then he offered a package for him to leave, and then this money was the money that we used it here for our first 6 months, maybe. Yep.
Wow.
Even or the tuition, the first year of the tuition. Yeah.
So
Wow.
it was like an unexpected.
Yeah.
blessing
He
as
didn't
well.
need to do that, but he
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So your friends all said you should go, and your boss is paying for you to go.
Yes, I was like that.
Sorry. So like,
Don't do this for a story, Paul.
sorry, no, sorry. Just ruined a good story.
I cannot tell why we're here. Nobody wants us back there.
My mom wants me back. I can tell my mom wants me back.
So there's cost, right? But we never imagine, right? We never imagine actually what God is going to do with that simple yes, right? When we say, can we, or will you? And I think maybe we have an idea in our mind, but I've always found, and I think as we read through these stories, it's always so much more. And this, even this story, as we come to, Philip here, what's the first thing he says yes to? Can you go down? I want you to hang out on the desert road. And he doesn't tell him anything other than that. So he goes down, and there's this radical encounter with a Gentile and a eunuch who receives the gospel, who receives Christ, is baptized. Philip demonstrates this radical trust and obedience, and actually what he's doing is radical. But more radical is what the Spirit of God is doing, right? That this Philip's openness, and this goes back to what I said right at the very beginning, like to be open to hearing God's voice, actually is to partner with Him in the amazing ministry, kingdom ministry, and experience the much more of life that Jesus invites us into. And because Philip, in this simple yes that started with a "would you go there?" actually paved the way for the mission to the Gentiles, right? This was, the progress, significant progress towards the fulfilling of Christ's commission to say, go to the ends of the earth. Ethiopia would have been considered the ends of the earth, right? And so this is what he's done. And in that, there's that, I'm reminded where Jesus tells the story about, the guys, the stewards with the bags of money, and they're going to invest it, and what are they going to do with it? And then the guy who invests it well, Jesus says, well done, good and faithful servant, you have been faithful with a few things, and I'm going to put you in charge of many things. Come and enjoy your master's, or share in your master's happiness. And so times where maybe God says something to us, it's an act of simple trust and obedience. It started out with that sense of, would you go? Like, would you lay down your job? Would you lay down your job and your career and this thing that you love? And would you go there? And when we do, God does stuff that is far beyond our imaginations. What you had anticipated and what you're living today, how is that? Because I think in that yes, and then bringing us into that abundance of life, how do you think saying yes to God has actually shaped and formed you, and particularly your relationship with Him? How have you grown through?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really struck us in this story particularly, and thinking about our own journey is like Philip had the freedom to say yes because he wasn't too attached to himself, right? So I think that was what we learned when we came here, I think. We learned day by day, week by week, month by month, and we are still learning how to be free to serve Jesus, The questions are always there, and like uncertainties, everything that kind of surrounds you kind of asks the question, like, is God going to fulfill His promise? Is God, But until now, yes. Everything that we have experienced here, in my perception at least, has brought us to a place of more freedom to follow Him. So, yeah. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I agree with what you were saying, and one thing that I think God has teaching me during this time here in Canada is that I left my job that was a very good job. I loved Rocha, Brazil, and I love to work with them. But I was in a very stressed moment, like carrying the organization on my back because of all the financial burden and the difficulties that we had at the moment. And it was very hard. And when we moved here and learning a new language and being like a kid, like a child again, was to trust God in an ordinary way, like everyday life. And even one thing that this is one of the teachings that God has teaching me through my studies at Regent, that is I am a creature of God. That I am a daughter, but I am also a creature of God. That means I don't have control of my life or the other things that are around me. And in a way, this has been like liberation to me, because I don't need to carry this burden all the time. Like I need to do this or I need to do that. I just need to be aware of God, God in creation, God in my neighbors, God in the community garden that we're starting right now in our neighborhood. Everything, these small pieces that are part of our life is how God is teaching me how to care for other people and to myself, but in a more, I would say maybe in a more humble way, because I can see that I'm a creature and I need to be reminded every day that I'm a creature and I don't have control. And even the pandemic is like more crucial right now for me, because we have even less control right now, right? Of your lives and plans or trips. We would love to go to Brazil. We're planning to go to Brazil last year. We couldn't, and this year probably we cannot go again. And this trusting that God is taking care of everything and our families and friends, and be aware that we're creatures. I think this is something that God is talking to me every day right now.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I think probably for a lot of people, I mean, you say right now, especially COVID and everything locking down. I mean, actually, nothing's changed except everything has changed. We're just aware of it, right?
Yep.
And so, like, we're really not masters of this at all.
Yeah,
You know, so
yeah.
I think something in going in that following and saying yes puts us in a place of surrender, and you really get to live that out. But I mean, it doesn't have to be a continent scale moving from one side. It's a daily choice, right? But I love what you said about the freedom. Actually, it's liberating to know that the Lord has me, and He guides me, and He makes my steps sure. So so where do we this invitation into this more of, and you guys have experienced God's faithfulness and His provision in saying yes to Him. And you've come here, you've trusted Him, you've experienced the closeness of His care in so many different ways. I heard a story recently, actually this week. Heidi Kwa is a young woman. She's only 26 now, but at 18 she founded an organization called Refuge for Refugees. She was at 16, I think she was teaching English in a refugee camp, shocked by the conditions for the refugees, and thought, I felt God prompting her to do something about it. 18, she set this thing up. Now at 26, they've started 35 schools for refugees in these camps where they have no rights, no access to education, healthcare, any kind of provision. It's just, and they're there for 10, 15, sometimes 20 or more years. Remarkable story about a young woman, and you see and you hear her passion and her heart, and also something of the experience and the realness of like the raw work of God, like trusting Him, seeing Him answer prayers. That's exciting. And she was asked after this, so young people wanting to make a difference, wanting to say yes to God, to discover, find purpose and meaning, you're like, where do we begin? And I thought her answer was really telling, because she said, well, she didn't start with what they should do. She said, I would tell them, first of all, be secure in your identity in Christ. Be secure in who you are in Him. And I think that's foundational, isn't it? Like it is, for us, if we want to be used by God, or in any area of our lives, like just understanding who we are in Him. And, you know, going back to what I said at the very beginning, as children of God, and that is what we are. That's who we are. You know, we get a chance to partner with Him in this life, in His ministry, in the wonderful kingdom ministry, to create with Him and experience life in all abundance. And I think back to Jesus, the start of His ministry. You know, it started, He was baptized by John. He was baptized by John. And as He came out of the water, the heaven was being torn open and the Spirit descending on Him. He saw the Spirit descending on Him like a dove, and a voice came from heaven. You are my Son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased. That the love and the affirmation of the Father, which is everything that starts, it's where we begin. So I think when this idea of saying yes to God, to listen to God, to be obedient to Him, to surrender Him, it comes, we don't go to earn anything. We're not going to prove anything. We're not going to make us right with Him. It's a response to what He's done. And I think we've said in other weeks, you know, they're big. Sometimes God will ask us a big thing. And I'd love us to be open to the possibility that maybe He will. And maybe He is. And our ability to say yes to that, or anything, or yes to Him even, comes from a point of understanding that we are dearly loved as children of God, and no greater demonstration of His love was shown than that of Jesus on the cross, giving up His life for us. So I think it's where it begins. I think it's probably where we'll end this conversation now. I'm gonna pray now for us, and for everybody that's kind of part of this conversation, that truth would land in our hearts. So should we do that now? So Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for Gustavo and Andrea and your work in their lives, for their obedience to say yes to you, Lord, and all that you have shown them. Your faithfulness to them at every step along the way, for the even greater things, Lord, that you're leading them into. We praise you for, and we bless them in your name. And Father, I pray for your church, for all of us, for all of those who are listening and who are waiting at home. Lord, would your Spirit fall afresh on us? Lord, may we seek you not for that thing, not for an answer to a question, but may we seek you to find you and to know that we are loved. And Lord, may your Spirit descend on us wherever we are today. Fill us anew. Mark us as your own. Draw us closer to you, I pray, that we might live to your praise and to your glory. Amen. Thank you, guys.